Okay, our next session is very much a preeclampsia flavoured session, which I know is going to be important to all of us because I know we've all experienced patients, if not every day, every week, with preeclampsia. We've got a varied mix of speakers with great experience and knowledge about it. Our first is Sinead, who's a patient who's experienced preeclampsia, so she's probably going to give us the best information we've got on this. Sinead's a music lecturer. And given that she lectures all the time, she says she's going to be brilliant at this.
So I've got some slides. I'm just going to whiz through them quite quickly. If you can't hear me, put your hand up and I'll be a bit louder. Okay, so when I had my first child, I was 34. Nothing of particular interest when I booked with the midwife. Everything was fine. And then at 28 weeks it all started to go a bit pear-shaped. So at my 28-week check I had a slight increase in blood pressure. I didn't know what it was. She didn't tell me. She said it's slightly raised, and I thought, I've just had a big row with my husband. That will be it. And that's literally what I thought. No protein, but by the time I got to 30 weeks I had quite serious swelling in my feet and ankles, and I couldn't do up my boots when I was going to work, and I thought, lots of people had said to me, oh yeah, you're pregnant, you'll get swelling in your feet, and one of my friends had helpfully uploaded onto Facebook her swollen feet. She couldn't get her shoes on, so I thought, okay, this is normal, nothing to worry about. I also had a single episode of visual disturbance where I was sitting in a room and my eyes went a bit funny. I had some spots in front of my eyes. It went away. I was a bit concerned, so I called into my GP surgery on my way home from work and said, can you take my blood pressure? And they did, and it was fine. It was about 29 weeks at that point. So I thought, well, I think I'm seeing the midwife next week anyway, so we'll wait and see. But I also had other symptoms which nobody really looked at as a whole. I had really severe acne, and I'm not sure if it's in any way related. Perhaps, you know, if you're toxic, maybe it comes out in your skin. I don't know. It was really bad, and it's not something that I usually would have. I had awful heartburn and headaches, the typical headache that doesn't resolve with paracetamol. And in the last couple of days before I was admitted to hospital, I had epigastric pain and I was sick, which I put down to a curry that I had eaten the night before. And I'd also gained 5 pounds in a week, which, considering I hadn't really been gaining very much weight, was a bit, I thought, well, I suppose the baby's got to come out somewhere. But I started to feel unwell at a weekend, Friday, Saturday, and I googled the symptoms on Sunday morning, and I thought I could have preeclampsia, and then I looked at the risk factors in my book online of who could get it, and I thought, oh no, I don't have any of those risk factors. It isn't me. So I had a pre-arranged clinic appointment on the Monday, because I had quite bad back pain, which I put down to a lot of driving for work, and the way the baby was lying. And so I spoke to the doctor. She said, right, we'll get you a physio appointment. And on the way out the door, she said, oh, we haven't done your blood pressure, or have you got a urine sample? And it all went steadily downhill from there. So I was quite unwell, and I didn't really. I wouldn't say I felt well, but I hadn't been 30 weeks pregnant before, so I didn't really know, well, how do you feel when you're 30 weeks pregnant? I was exhausted, I was working quite hard, I was, had to get all these things done before the baby came. It was important that, so, I just thought, I'm a bit tired and I'll have a week off. I had a week off coming up, so I thought I'd be fine and have a rest. I was put on this preeclampsia protocol, catheter, cannulae, restriction of food. I was given steroids straight away for the baby's lungs. Yeah, essentially, when I saw the consultants in the hospital, you know, they'd say to me, well, you're holding your own. So, well, it depended on the consultant, and this was quite frightening for me, where some consultants would, you know, see me, take my blood pressure and ask me immediately had they got a cot for the baby. And others would say, well, you're holding your own, your bloods aren't as bad as we thought. You know, they did a growth scan on that day. I was admitted to hospital, and the baby was an appropriate size for gestation. And I didn't really see the need for a catheter, so I got them to take that out. But as I said about it being unpredictable, you know, were we going to have a baby at 30 weeks, or was I going to be able to hold on? Nobody could answer that. Nobody can answer that, and that's what's quite hard. That was quite hard for me. I didn't know what was going to happen from day to day. So the doctor talked about hopefully getting me to 34 weeks. That would be good for the baby. That would be better. So my blood pressure was all over the place. So within a few days, I was having quite a lot of labetalol. So as the midwife said, gosh, I've never seen anybody have that much labetalol before, and nifedipine as well. And what would happen is I would start off on delivery suite, and then I would get moved upstairs when my blood pressure stabilised. I'd get moved upstairs to the ward, and I'd just get nice and comfortable there, and the early warning signs would be 5, and I would get moved back downstairs again for monitoring, and they'd phone up for a cot for the baby, and this would happen every few days. And then they put me back on the protocol, 3 cannulae, got the consultant to write in my notes, lady does not want catheter. So I didn't, because I thought I could get up to go to the toilet. So I didn't have to have that. But the Dopplers were okay, and I was discharged on the 4th of November. So I was told to come in for daily monitoring, which was fine. I live quite near the hospital. I mean, at that point, I thought when I was discharged I could go to work on Monday. But that was a bit unrealistic, really, because I was admitted back to hospital on the following Monday. So I attended hospital over the weekend, and the midwives weren't happy that I was sent home, really. And the consultant I was seeing, one of them wasn't happy that I was sent home, but the decision had been made by somebody else because she wasn't there. And I do understand the need to normalise, patient care, etc. And being in hospital is not very good for you. I actually felt safer in hospital, and I thought the baby was safer in hospital. And I was actually readmitted and told I had to stay until delivery. So what happened? I mean, you know, what goes through your head during that time? It was just I felt, you know, quite cheated. Like when would I prepare for my baby? Sorry. So anyway, so I did feel that was quite a big thing. Okay, so that was quite a big thing for me. You know, you kind of hear people say, "Oh, I've got to go to Babies R Us and I've got to buy a cot, I've got to buy this," and I didn't have anything, and you know, I didn't do any of that stuff. I couldn't. So one night, about 3 in the morning, the doctor came in to me and he said, "We've just had your 24-hour urine result, and it's quite bad. Your bloods are okay, but your urine is far too much protein. It's going to damage you if you keep the baby in. So we're going to have to induce you in the morning." So at that point, so I leave my husband sleep for a while, and I telephone him about 6 or 7 o'clock, and I'll explain, tell him to come in. So that was fine. So Lucy was born, forceps delivery. She was fine. She didn't need oxygen. She was small, so she did have some growth restriction. So although she was an appropriate size at 30 weeks, at 32 weeks her growth had tailed off, and then at 34 weeks, by the time we were supposed to have the next growth scan, I'd had her. So I mean, I was told that, you know, it's best to wait for 2 weeks. When they looked at the Dopplers, sometimes they were okay. And then occasionally there was a bit of concern, and they would check it the next day and it was better. So you know, in terms of the monitoring the baby, you know, that was, for me, I thought that was done very well, and she always seemed very happy on the CTGs, apart from when I was induced. So, having a baby anemic. Well, I mean, that was quite hard. It's quite hard to know when you'd be welcome to visit, particularly when doctors were doing ward rounds, and you know that the ward round is happening, and can you still be there with your baby? And sometimes, you know, depending on what other babies were in the, you know, they would ask you to go into a room, the family room, and wait while other babies were being discussed or whatever, and that was quite hard. And I mean, she was in an incubator for a couple of hours, so then she was judged to be fine, and just to get her feeding established and make sure she was gaining weight appropriately. But it's quite an emotional roller coaster, as you probably gathered. I think when I talk about it, oh yes, it was all fine, and then suddenly I realised actually it's quite a big thing. So after I'd had her, my blood pressure was significantly worse, but it was actually easier to control because I hadn't got baby inside me anymore. So eventually they got it sorted, and I was kept in for 10 days though, and we had it was quite hard really, the whole thing of breastfeeding. I mean, that's what I wanted to do, that's what I decided I wanted to do, but I kept getting these conflicting messages about you must sleep, I want you to sleep from 12 to 6 every night. That was what the midwives on the ward I was on were telling me. And then I was being told, you must express every 2 hours, because maybe every 3 hours. And I find written in my daughter's notes still no express breast milk from mum after 2 or 3 days, which was quite hard because she had a feeding tube in, and it was very much a case of feed her with the tube or breastfeed her. If you give her a bottle, she won't ever breastfeed. So I felt a bit of a failure at that point. And when I went to my postnatal group, my area, so we came home from hospital after about 12 days, Lucy was in for about 12 days. And because she'd been born early, I was able to join our area's postnatal group earlier than I would have done otherwise. So she was only about 2 months old. I know it was the start of January, we started a new group that our area runs for new mums. And, you know, people would say things like, oh, she's really small, can she go swimming? One person used the word, when I was in hospital, is she viable? And I'd been born at 33 weeks myself, so actually having, because I was a twin, my mum didn't have preeclampsia, she just, her waters just broke. And, you know, having known that I was a premature baby and having a twin brother, and that didn't daunt me, having a small premature baby. And so I couldn't really understand that. I think maybe people's attitudes, maybe people don't see premature babies. I mean, she just looked like a normal baby, she was just small. But I think people thought she looked different, I don't know. Okay, so this is Elsa, or Lucy, today. And she's absolutely fine, didn't really impact on her in any significant way. She's actually really, really tall for her age. And within a couple of months, by the time she was 10 months, she'd definitely caught up in terms of her weight. Because she was on the small side, and we didn't really notice anything, you know, in terms of her development that she didn't do on time, or you know. So to have another baby or not, I made a good recovery. So within a couple of months, everything was fine. I was referred to, when I was on the ward, I saw a cardiologist, and I saw him twice after having Lucy, and everything was fine. So my main worry, could this happen again? And I think I assumed it would. And could it be worse? And if I had to spend time in hospital, what would happen to Lucy? So I just thought, well, if it's the right thing for us, it'll happen. And nobody ever said to me, don't have another baby. You know, it's too risky. And I don't know, obviously, you know, there are a lot of you in the room who've met this before on many occasions. And I do know of women who've been told not to risk another pregnancy, but I wasn't. Nobody said that to me. So that's Lydia. So I was put on aspirin at 12 weeks. Well, I could have started it. Okay, I could have started it earlier, but I decided to start it from 12 weeks. So I had a very supportive community midwife. I had to complete the centre previa just so I could do something different this time. I decided to have a complete centre previa at 20 weeks and still at 34 weeks, at which point I was told, oh, it won't change now. So I was booked for a section at 38 weeks, or 39 weeks, and I insisted on having another scan because I said, well, if you compare the measurements from the last 2 scans, it's actually only a few millimetres left to go, it might change. And my consultant said, oh, go on then, come on Monday for a scan. So I had a scan, I didn't have a scan on the Monday because my waters broke on the Sunday night. And I thought, this is great, I'm fed up being pregnant, hopefully all will be okay. So I went into hospital and I had her and there was no problem, there was no placenta previa. And it was all hunky-dory. And so I did have, I was very carefully monitored. So at one point, my blood pressure went up. I mean, not seriously, I can't remember now. Maybe 92 on the bottom or something like that. And I was sent into for monitoring. When I got there, everything was perfect. And I think it was the 2-year-old with the pseudocreme all over the carpet that did it, you know. And I was convinced it was just the fact that I was totally irate by the time I got to the midwife, and I had all these handprints all over the carpet of pseudocreme. So by the time I got to AAU in the afternoon, everything was fine. So Lydia arrived safely. All fine. So discharged from hospital, could have gone home a few hours after I had her, but I thought I'll stay and have a rest because if I get home I'll have to do jobs. And no issues with blood pressure, all lovely. About day 5 I started to feel, I'm not right, I'm not well, there's something not right. Yeah, so the midwives had come to see my visits, hadn't brought a blood pressure monitor because nobody told them they need one. Well, it wasn't my community midwife, so she would have brought one. Something had gone wrong with her and she ended up being off unexpectedly. So nobody took my blood pressure. And so I went to the out-of-hours doctor and I was, something not right here. I feel like my blood pressure's gone up. I feel like I did when I had preeclampsia. Oh no, you can't have preeclampsia, that's a disease of pregnancy. And I was like, I'm really sure I've read somewhere you can get it postnatally. And I thought, I'm too tired to argue, and what's more, I've been waiting 2 hours and I have a newborn at home who's like screaming the place down for feeding. So, I don't know, I mean, I went to the GP and they said your blood pressure is borderline, buy a monitor, check it yourself 3 times a week, and if you're still worried, come back. So there was no problem. They said, I mean, I had a UTI, so I had a temperature and whatever, so I think they just kind of put it all down to that. But nobody actually tested me for preeclampsia because you can't have it when you can't have it postnatally, apparently, which is not true. Okay, so I would say first time when I had Lucy, we were very, very, very lucky that it was picked up on at all. It was just a coincidence that we ended up in the hospital, and we did receive very good care. So you know, I can't fault the community midwife and the consultants at the hospital. Okay, we can take questions now. Sorry, were you going to do that?
Time for 2 really quick questions. Anyone's got a question?
You mentioned that you use Google. Had you ever heard of preeclampsia?
Yes, I had. Yeah. So I think it was the booking appointment. The midwife had mentioned. So in the green pregnancy notes, there is something on preeclampsia, and she said, you know, any severe headaches, anything like that. But I think she was, you know, as surprised as I was that I got it. You know, like, because anybody can get it. That's the thing, really, isn't it? And she wouldn't have put me in the risk as being high risk, that I did get it. So, yeah. But I had heard of it, yeah. But then when I read the list of symptoms and thought, and then I read, the list of people who might get it, the risk factors, and I thought, oh no, I haven't got them. So I was 34, which is, it's not really geriatric mum yet. So if I had a baby now, I would be geriatric mum. But at the time, I wasn't really.
Any other questions?
Is your twin a girl?
No, boy.
Oh, right. We won't ask whether she had it then.
My sister is 10 years younger than me, and I wonder, she would have a lot of risk factors for it anyway, and I wonder, I would be very, very nervous when she's pregnant. I think she would be too.
Can we just give Sinead a really big hand for
So you need to drink on the train on the
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
I knew it would all go wrong at some point. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I'll just listen to you. No, I didn't. Yeah.
Okay, our next speaker is next speaker is Anne-Marie Barnard. She's the CEO of the pre-eclampsia charity Action on Preeclampsia. An ex-qualified nurse and midwife, so she's going to give us a wealth of experience. Very excited about that, I'm sure. Anne-Marie.
Can you hear me at the back? It's always a tough act to follow our speakers. Sinead's spoken for us at APEC before around the midwifery study days, and there was nothing like hearing it from the heart and from a person who's been affected like that. So I'm here as the Chief Exec of Action on Preeclampsia, which is the only UK charity devoted especially to preeclampsia. And I wish I was starting in the middle of my presentation, because there I'm talking about the issues that arise when women have been through preeclampsia, and also things like not having heard of it and things like that. But I'll come to that later. So first of all, I'm just going to give you an overview of the charity. It was set up in 1991 by Isabel Walker, who was a medical journalist, and Chris Redman. I'm sure a lot of you will have heard of Chris. And our vision is one of a future in which there'll be no deaths from preeclampsia due to substandard care. And our mission is to ease the suffering of women and their families by increasing public awareness, increasing professional knowledge, and the provision of support. So 20 years on, why is the charity still needed? As you know, and bear with me for these, until very recently eclampsia was a major cause of maternal death, and figures hadn't reduced for a decade. It's a common disease affecting 10% of pregnancies, but we know that it ranges in severity of how it affects pregnancies. Midwives tell APEC they're just not confident in managing preeclampsia, in knowing when to act, in knowing when to refer women on. As Sinead said, a little bit of swelling could be common, or a little bit of nausea is common, and midwives also aren't quite sure when they should be admitting women to further checks or calling in senior personnel. Women themselves are often unclear. They perhaps haven't heard of preeclampsia. The majority of women who get in touch with us have never heard of it until it affects them. They're not quite sure why their blood pressure is being checked every appointment, or their urine. They're quite tempted, especially if they've got other children, to skip their antenatal appointments because they feel absolutely fine, thank you. And it's not a clear-cut disease. As we saw from Sinead, things can change very, very quickly. It can be symptomless, it can be swift, and it's a challenge for anybody involved in the care of pregnant women. This is just a graph showing, these figures are taken from the CMA's reports, but you can see that deaths due to preeclampsia and the percentage due to substandard care increased between 2000 and 2008. So in 2000 and 2002 CMAC report, 14 women died of preeclampsia, and in 50% of cases that was associated with substandard care. By the 2006-2008 report, 22 women died, and substandard care was implicated in 91% of cases. I'm sorry, this is a really poor slide, but in the CMAT report in 2011, they said yet again it's the largest cause of death was a failure of effective antihypertensive therapy, and that should be a priority in improving care for these women. Fortunately, by 2014, the Saving Lives report that came out in December, deaths from preeclampsia have fallen to their lowest since 1952. So now 3.8 women per 100,000 are dying. Cathy Nelson-Piercy, who most of you will have heard of, she's a trustee of APEC, and as she says, we hope that this is mirrored by a reduction in near misses and severe cases. At APEC, we educate the public and healthcare professionals, promote the relief of stress for women, and campaign for greater awareness and improvements in detection and management. In terms of educating professionals, in 2005 we produced the first ever guidelines for midwives working in the community. We called them PRECOG, Pre-Eclampsia Community Guideline. More were produced for women, for midwives working in the day assessment unit in 2009. They're still good today, they're free. If any of you want a copy, please just get in touch with APEC and we can send them out. They're available to download from our website free of charge too. We run study days for midwives for a year. We run an expert meeting each year in London where we bring together all of the experts in preeclampsia around the country and look at issues around preeclampsia. So one year we focused on research, all of the current research going on. Another year we focused on fetal involvement. We've got the up-to-date website with all of the information, with downloads. We have an e-learning package which is a useful sort of reminder really for anybody. It's free again, so if you want a quick refresher on preeclampsia, please just log on. We target the media wherever we can, midwifery journals, the Lancet articles, with articles. We have stands at professional conferences. We're very lucky at our study days that most of the trustees of APEC are medics or midwives, and we're very, very lucky in that speakers from all around the country give their time freely, including people like Jenny, who's here today, Jenny Myers, come along and lecture free of charge. We always have a speaker, a woman who, we use the word sufferer, but it's people like Sinead who come along and share their experiences. And we aim for 4 a year. We find, unfortunately, that the numbers of midwives attending is dropping because they can't get the funding to come and they have to use their own time. And those days are open to anybody who's interested in the care of pregnant women or involved in the care of pregnant women. So we have student midwives and anybody who wants to come along. In terms of educating the public, we have our website, we have leaflets, provision of materials in the community. You all have had a copy of the leaflet that we provide to hospitals, why blood pressure and urine are checked in pregnancy. Those are there for hospitals to give to women, all about preeclampsia. That's the, if you haven't picked it up already, that's the leaflet we have there. We also have the postnatal care of people with preeclampsia. We've got a basic preeclampsia information sheet available, and that's in 20 different languages. That's a simple A4 black and white sheet that you could print off free of charge again. And we provide relief from stress, we call it. I mean, basically it's a helpline. We advise and support women and families who've been affected. And we have a Facebook site, we have a Health Unlocked site. We have an expert referral scheme, so when people do get in touch with us and they're not happy for whatever reason, we have 24 experts around the country that GPs can refer women to. And again, as I say, all of our different information sheets. People who get in touch with our helpline get in touch mainly for these reasons. So the main, as you see, almost half of people are worried about future pregnancies. As Sinead just said, am I going to get it again? then a lot of people are worried. They're pregnant now. They feel their doctor or midwife doesn't understand what they're going through, or doesn't understand how severe things were for them last time. They feel they're not taken seriously, and they're frightened. 9% have postnatal concerns. I'm still not feeling well, I'm still not feeling right, and nobody's listening. A lot of people just want to talk. Some people are worried about research, and we've all come across this. They've read an article in the newspaper, and does it affect them? We had one gentleman who phoned from America, actually, and he'd read some research implicating the male in preeclampsia, and that if a woman had a male partner, that it was his fault, basically, that she was getting preeclampsia. His wife had 3 children. In the first pregnancy, she hadn't had preeclampsia. She had it in the second 2 pregnancies, and so they couldn't be his children, could they? And that was an interesting call to take. The most common issues that come up are fear for the future. I've had a bad experience, I don't understand what's happened to me, is it going to happen again? A lot of women come out of hospital, and it's not until they know they've had high blood pressure, they know they've had problems, they know they've had a drip, they know they've had to be catheterised, they don't really know why. They come out of hospital, they get onto Google, they see this preeclampsia and realise that that's what happened to them. Is it going to happen again? They don't know who to turn to, they don't get on with their GP, or they feel they're being a pest by going back to their GP. They don't want to be a nuisance. They don't feel their GP. A lot of women now, a lot of people now get onto the internet, and they've probably learnt more in an hour than their GP has seen in the last 2 years. So they go to the GP and they're asking incredibly complex questions, and they feel they know more than their GP. And in terms of recent knowledge, they possibly do. Things they've heard about, like aspirin, is that going to harm my baby? Debriefing, why did this happen to me and what did I do wrong? Guilt is a huge thing for a lot of women. They cannot believe that they didn't do something wrong. Was it that I stayed at my job? Was it that I didn't eat enough fish? Whatever. And a lot of women just want somebody to talk to. Our average helpline call is about an hour and always involves quite a lot of tears. I've put a few case studies together, just of, well, not case studies, but just a few examples of calls that I've taken. What I should have said at the off is that a lot of women who get in touch with us are happy with their care. They were perfectly happy with the way they were treated in hospital. It was the run-up and the back in the community side of things that worried them. So this young lady, I mean, this is fairly extreme really. She was 17 when she had her first pregnancy. She'd never heard of preeclampsia. But she just feels that she feels terrible, that she couldn't bring the baby into the world naturally. She feels guilty that she might have another premature baby. 3 years later, she hadn't spoken to her GP, to her husband, to anybody about her experience. And she's not sure she's ever going to have another baby. This lady had her baby back in 2011, and she and her husband are talking about having another one. She's been to her GP and he has referred her to a specialist, but he doesn't think much will come of it. The hospital had lost her notes anyway. So this is a lady who felt, you know, quite isolated and unsupported in the community. This lady again, she's had severe preeclampsia at 26 weeks. She'd lost her baby. She was put through a normal delivery, which she felt at the time was cruel, so clearly nobody had really explained to her why she'd had a normal delivery. And she felt guilty that the job had contributed. She feels that nobody understands what she's been through. And so it goes on. This lady won't have any other children. And this lady feels that she's going to have a termination with this pregnancy. Sorry to rush through. So as a charity, we offer support to these women. The expert referral scheme, as you can see, one lady is very, very satisfied there. She's had now all the appropriate information about having another baby. This lady was shocked at the lack of support available. She feels midwives and doctors are sympathetic, but they don't understand what a nightmare she's been through. She wished somebody had been there to talk to her at the time. So in summary, women leave hospital feeling ill-informed, they feel terrified, they drop off the radar, GPs seem ill-informed and unsympathetic. There's a reported lack of consultant debriefs. It does seem very much the postnatal and after they've had the baby that the lack of support is there. A very traumatic experience, and it never leaves women, it still affects them years later. And Sinead, I hope you don't mind me saying, but as you can see, Sinead, 3 years on, still very upset. And just in closing, I will say that after that episode of Downton Abbey, when Lady Sybil died, the next morning our helpline calls went like this, that one was from a lady of 70 who'd lost her baby 40 years before and was still mourning that baby, still felt that she'd never had the support or understanding from that death, and it just doesn't leave women. And I'll leave it there because I think I've run out of time. So thank you very much for listening.
Have you got any questions for Anne-Marie? Well, I guess this is partly to you, Anne-Marie and Sinead. I mean, what's the best thing? What's the message clinicians should be taking home from sort of this and what you've experienced?
I think talk to people, make time.
I know you're very, very busy, but if you could take 5 minutes to sit down with a woman and her husband and say, this is what happened, it is not your fault, and this is where you can get further information. That APEC is there, go to your GP, and make sure as well that the information that's sent out to the follow-up care in the community is very, very clear. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I never felt that not particularly felt that, you know, it was my fault, but even I'm surprised when I was giving the talk that it's still upsetting me. It's still something that's very raw, even though I've had another baby, you know, we're all fine, very lovely, and still, when I think about it, it was horrendous. And it's the postnatal thing that is really hard, because I think the midwives will come and check the baby and check you're okay, and then it seems whose responsibility is it after that? You know, who's going to make sure that the mum is okay and that she's not struggling with what happened, which is quite hard. It doesn't seem that that's anybody's particular remit, you know.
Yeah, joined up postnatal care. We had one lady who had, her baby was still in SCBU, but she'd been discharged. She needed her blood pressure checking daily and was told they couldn't do it in the hospital because she'd been discharged from hospital care. So she had to wait at home for the community midwife to take her blood pressure before she could come into SCBU. Now, why couldn't somebody, somewhere along the line, have just had a bit of common sense and said, we'll just take your blood pressure here?
They did mine in the hospital,
did
actually,
they?
because I was discharged before. And actually, they wouldn't let me care for my baby until they felt that I was physically okay, so it was important to them that I was okay as well. And but that is an issue. I mean, I've heard of other people who have to do that as well.
Joined up care.